Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show, an all-star edition of the Total Soccer Show. My name is Taylor Rockwell. Today, I'm joined by two fine fellows on location in Atlanta, preparing for karaoke, discussing the skills challenge. Joe Lowry, how is it to be in Austin?
Yes, Austin. I did not make the trip to Atlanta and then back to Austin right before we started recording. Really, to be in Austin, Taylor, is to have frizzy hair. That's what I've learned, or at least to have poofy, humidity-impacted hair, which is exactly where I am for those watching along at home rather than listening along at home. It is great, though, to be in Austin. I got to see Jeff in the flesh yesterday. Rumor has it I'll see him again today. Rumor even has it I might see him again tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes down. But sources say that I have seen Jeff in person.
Sources say that you've seen Jeff. That would be Jeff Reuter. Hello, Jeff. How was karaoke last night?
Long and late. We closed down a karaoke bar. I did my part by singing Blue Monday by New Order, which has so many song breaks and instrumental breaks that they're like, maybe we could just take off. So I helped them clear out the bar ahead of time, which was really nice. But yeah, got to hang out with a lot of friends I don't usually get to see, who usually exist as little avatars on social media and, in group chats. So always good. Like, MLS needs more of these events. They used to have the Super Draft, which was with the coaches convention, and so it would be like a good congregating moment for not just like GMs and coaches, but media members and podcasters and whoever else. This is a pre-influencer society, I suppose, before the Super Draft became a conference call. But I miss it. So good to be here.
We should make the MLS Next Pro Choose Your Own Playoff Adventure draft. Everybody, I think this was referenced maybe on the show recently. Where in MLS Next Pro you get to, if you're the higher seed, draft the team that you want to play against. Like if Taylor's the top seed and Jeff, you and I are like 6 and 7 or whatever in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Taylor can pick who he wants to play. Yeah, let's be real.
We're a tournament
Taylor
team.
could decide whatever he wanted, and they do it on a Zoom call, like just a regular old Zoom call. We need to make that a live in-person event. We need to actually get MLS proper to adopt it, and we need to be there as a collective society. That's what I've decided.
I'm a little curious who I would choose to go against in karaoke, because I know that I am of very limited ability when it comes to singing, musical acumen, and I feel like both of you would get the crowd going. Both of you would have sort of songs ready to go. I'm not sure either one of you would be a good person to go up against. I feel like I'm getting knocked out in the first round.
Taylor, you'd rather go up against me because I was too much of a lightweight to be at karaoke last night. I just need to make sure that's clear to listener that I did not go with Jeff and some others to karaoke. I think they were chanting one more at me, and I said, no, I'm going home. But I do think that probably tilts it a little bit more towards, you want to take on Joe in karaoke. Like, I just have one less rep than Jeff at this point. Like, I'm not out there on the training field. I'm not out there grinding and staying late. I think that could be my downfall in this competition.
And Jeff, was Blue Monday, is that your standard? Is that the one that you have to pretend like you don't sing a lot? And I guess I'll just do that one, and then every single beat?
I guess I would say that because this is the third time I've done it now, and I think I'm starting to realize I might need one that's shorter, because that song is like 6 minutes of standing there, and maybe it's more of an efficient, involved, get in, get out, 2-minute crowd pleaser. Like, everyone loves if you do the tequila song for a similar sort of atmosphere, and you just say the word tequila over and over and over. Like, it plays well. So
doesn't that only
we're going
happen
back
a
to the
couple
training
times?
ground.
Don't you end up standing there waiting to say tequila for a very long time? Which I think in and of itself is its own form of entertainment.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and that's half of it, right? With karaoke, we're a karaoke podcast now, right?
Right.
Yeah, let's move swiftly away from this. I'm sorry I've taken us down this road. Let's talk some transfer updates, shall we? Because some things have happened, and I think the gist for me of a lot of this is going to be, is this team still good? Are they trying to be good right now, or are they hoping to be good in the future? Joe, I'm going to come to you to talk about Vancouver, if you would, because Pedro Vite is gone, sold to Pumas, and I was ready for this to be a sign of okay, they're not really trying to win now anymore. They've kind of recognized that they can make some money and be better next season, and it seems like that is maybe partially what's going on here. It does seem like they're still going to try to make some moves, but it also feels like a move that the majority of people I've seen have been this is a great move. Yes, he's a great player, but you got a lot of money, you can reinvest it. This is going to be just fine. So I'm wondering how you feel about the sale of Pedro Vite.
Yeah, I don't feel that way. I'll start there.
Okay.
I mean, this is a great move for Pedro Vite, I'd imagine, where he's probably had a pay bump. He just signed a new deal with Vancouver, but, I mean, when you sign a new deal and then immediately make a move, it kind of feels like that was always going to happen, and maybe the club just got a bit of leverage. Yeah, go Taylor.
I feel so bad, like, because I saw a lot of articles from 4 weeks ago that were like, we did it, renewal, 1.7 million, it's a bargain amount for him. He's going to be here through the World Cup. We're going to generate a huge transfer fee. We got him. We're going to win MLS Cup. And I was just like, oh, sorry, fellas. Like, in a couple weeks, you're going to be really disappointed by the new headlines about him.
And they should be saying, Vancouver's front office should be saying sorry to everybody because, they of course knew this is happening all along, and the fans are the ones who end up kind of, hurting a little bit in the process. So the fee here is interesting. So according to Manuel Vaith, he's heading to Liga MX Vitae for a $4.5 million fee with another $1.5 million in add-ons and a 20% sell-on clause. That's good money. It's Vancouver's highest outgoing transfer fee since Alphonso Davies. They didn't obviously get anywhere close to that Alphonso Davies money in this instance, but it's good money for a U22 player. Vitae is one of the best U22s in MLS history, right? And the rule hasn't been around for forever, but he's been incredibly productive. I can't spin this, though, as a positive. Like, the fee is not so blindingly large that it is a no-brainer move, nor is the jump in quality from MLS to Liga MX so large that it feels like a can't-miss opportunity for Pedro Vitae. Neither of those things are true. And so what I'm left with is that Vancouver are losing their best healthy final third playmaker. Like, Vitae leads this team in passes into the box with 40 so far this season. Next on the list is Eddie Ocampo, the fullback, with 26. Like, he is their most incisive, healthy final third passer. And to lose a player like that, even for understandable reasons, right? The Caps either weren't willing to give Vitae a DP deal, which I can kind of understand, to be honest. I think he's a very good player. I do think you can get more from a designated player in this league. So I don't fully blame them if that was a consideration. I don't know if it was. So either the Caps weren't willing to give him a DP deal, right? Where that new contract is just nestled underneath DP level, or he wanted to go somewhere else, Pedro Vitae, which I don't fully blame him for either. But what we're left with then is a Vancouver team that is just straight up worse today than they were yesterday, or worse after this move happened than they were before it. And even when they replace him, and they will with a new U22, it sounds like, even then they're still going to be worse off. So I think Vancouver's odds of competing are not zero, like for a trophy, for the Shield or for MLS Cup. They're not zero, but they are lower now than they were before this went down.
Jeff, does that vibe with your understanding of this move?
Yeah, and I fully agree with Joe. Like, there is more production that you can get from a designated player. So I think that if you look at it from a squad building perspective, you would say someone of Vitae's profile makes more sense to be in that U22 slot or as a high TAM guy when he ages out of that. So I recognize also you have to be flexible in the market. And as Joe said, this is their biggest sale since Davies. And while it doesn't come close to that fee, you need to sort of re-enter the market at some point. I think a lot of Vancouver fans have been waiting for them to re-enter the other direction for years and years and reinvest all of those Davies dollars and put them into the squad and give a better squad. And I think that a lot of fans would say this is the closest that they've come to that. This is the most competitive Vancouver Whitecaps team we've seen in a decade, comfortably, since like the heyday of Pedro Morales and Matias Laba. The hard part is that right now, MLS is also at a stage of its evolution where it knows that it needs to be active in every window. Every team understands that there is going to be some turnover. The way that the league has positioned itself in the global calendar means that you pretty much always need to be in that sort of hybrid returning mode. So this is the window that's optimal to sell a player abroad most of the time. I mean, like, look, this relationship between MLS and Liga MX is getting very friendly to an extent where this is just kind of a year-round discussion we have, right? But I think especially if you're saying this is when his value is going to be at the highest, we need to bite. It also tells me Ryan Gold must be close to coming back because I don't know why you make this move if he's not coming in, because that also solves some questions that we had about how you reincorporate him, right? So if that's what this leads to, if this is pretty much just like, thanks for keeping us in contention, results are falling off anyway, we need to change the lineup no matter what, let's get some money for these changes, like, I understand it, but overall, couldn't agree more. Like, it is worse. Vancouver Whitecaps are worse off than they were 2 weeks ago, let's say, because Pedro Vitae is no longer there.
Before I go fully into I'm frustrated with this league mode, because that is where I find myself, but I might just be in a mood. So I'll ask you both this. They are, according to that same reporting from Manuel, I believe they have already signed Kenji Cabrera. Is that correct?
I don't
or
think it's gone
process?
official, but
Okay.
the wind's blowing that direction.
All right, so 22 years old, not necessarily signed as a replacement for Pedro Vite. It's a $2 million fee thereabouts with a 20% sell-on clause again. But Manuel was also reporting that they are theoretically, supposedly, looking for 2 more players, potentially, a progressive passing midfielder and then a replacement for Pedro Vite. So does that seem feasible to you all from what you understand of Vancouver, that they could make 3 more signings in this window and kind of replace Vite and be stronger?
I was going to say, I could see a club doing that. I don't think I would say I could see Vancouver doing that, very specifically, right? Like, that's not a level of investment Greg Kerfoot has ever shown interest in. He's also trying to sell the club, so there's that sort of, like, keep costs at a minimum until you can, whatever, business jargon. So, yeah, it's ambitious. And the thing is, every club would love to have more guys who could do that. It's almost like they're asking MLS, hey, can we change the rule book so that we can sign more guys who could do the work of, Pedro Vite plus, right? And like, that's not going to happen this window, right? Yeah. You're not Bruce Arena's LA Galaxy of the early 2010s. They're not going to just change rules for you, right? So, I don't know.
So no.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's the opposite corner of the league's geography. Like, and so maybe they were trying some sort of like really cute sort of like, if you do it in the Southeast, you do it in the Northwest. I don't know. But overall, I just, they're worse off for it. I can't get over it. And also, like, you're taking for granted. That's sort of like a video game mentality to say, if I just sign 3 guys in the middle of the season, we'll be better for it. We'll have upgraded. It's like, okay, well, they didn't have preseason. They might be coming off of 2 months of off season if they're from Europe. So then you're going to need to reintegrate them. If they're playing in a sort of year-round calendar like Brazil or Mexico or whatever the case is, okay, that's great. But they still don't know your team, right? So it's like you're still sacrificing the back half of this season to set yourself up for next. It feels like a very weird prioritization of opportunity, I guess I would say, given the start that this club had.
First of all, whenever I want to do business talk, I'm just going to start saying business jargon and assume that the other people know what I mean, and just we can skip all through those buzzwords. Like, let's just skip that part. Hey, fast forward. I'm a huge fan of that, Jeff. That got me good.
Thank you.
On Vancouver, I guess I'm a little warmer on the idea that Vancouver could bring in another couple of players in this window, right? Between Cabrera, adding maybe another center mid, and I forget exactly what the other requirements there were, but I think it just depends on how clearly they can see a path to trophies, right? They're still in the Canadian Championship. They still, again, even though we're all down on this Vite move, they still have a clear sightline on the Shield. Like, they still have a clear sightline on MLS Cup. It is not impossible. They're going to be a top 4 team in the Western Conference. They're going to have home field advantage in the first round. They're going to be a team with a real chance to progress, especially, and Jeff, I totally agree, this does seem to indicate that Ryan Gauld is probably closer to coming back than I had feared that he was. So I do think that there's some positive there for Vancouver. So it's not all doom and gloom. The challenge with going and bringing in those players is that we're not in the middle of the season. We're like wrapping up the season in Major League Soccer right now. I don't know what it is for Vancouver, and I think every team at MLS has more games than this, but the summer transfer window closes on August 21st. The Houston Dynamo, to use another Western Conference example, has 7 regular season games left after the window closes on August 21st. 7! That is like a fifth of the season. We are in crunch time. We are not like, oh, let's find our new form, let's find a new balance. Let's wrap this sucker up, get as good of a spot in the playoffs as we can, and go try to win this thing. Now with Vancouver, sort of speaking in opposition to that, they did have great success grabbing the latest DP in MLS last year, in Stu Armstrong, who came in after the transfer window as a free agent. He came in September and was quite impactful for them come the playoffs when he was finally healthy enough and fit enough to play real minutes. So it's possible. And Vancouver have done this before. It's just really hard to do. Like, you have to nail a lot of things for you to be in a better position than you were when you had Vite and the hope of Gauld coming back. You have to do a lot of things right to be in a position where you actually are back on a level footing to where you were before. So I don't think it's impossible, and I think Vancouver would be foolish not to see their real trophy window. Even with Vite gone, good player, very good player, he is not so important to this team that they're just screwed without him. But it's going to be difficult for them to pull that off. I do think, though, they might actually try this year.
I'm trying to figure out how best to phrase this question, which is always a good introduction to a question.
I like it.
Is this a design flaw or a feature of Major League Soccer existing as more of a selling league at present? That you can have a team that has had a strong season, looks like well positioned for the playoffs, even if the form is a little bit shaky. But if somebody comes in with a big enough offer, you're going to part with that asset because it allows you to reinvest, it allows you to strengthen. Like, is this just a feature of MLS at present, or is this a problem for MLS at present? Because I'm inclined to say it's both simultaneously.
Yeah, I think it's one of those I think can be two things sort of moments, and it's probably a situation. Excuse me. The desk has a drawer. I'm learning in real time. My hotel desk has a drawer I can kick with my knee, so I'm going to tilt my chair this way and not do that again. Sorry, listeners. Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, and I think
insights into the recording process from Jeff Ruda. Thank you, Jeff.
I know. I'm waking up in real time. It's excellent. I was karaokeing until 7 hours ago. Yeah, no, I think that you have to balance that sort of like short-term prioritization versus long-term sustainability. And I think that a lot of the calibration of being a selling league is to make sure that you have players worth acquiring outside of the league, right? So when Joe projects correctly that a club is going to want to come into the cash transfer market for Sang-Bin Jung, Minnesota United now going to St. Louis City, it's a little easier because there's sort of like an I can fix him complex, right? And the idea is that you bring in these younger players from within the league so that you can then sell them later and make more money and the other team has a kickback and all that sort of stuff. If you're trying to sell Pedro Vite, the way that you kind of position yourself as a selling club is if you have the next, not necessarily the next Pedro Vite, but the next player who can step in, probably young again, prove himself, and then someone looks and says, okay, Pedro Vite did really well translating to Liga MX, so we are a Liga MX club, of course, all three of us, so let's go into the market. And Vancouver players generally are of a high standard, they're coached well, they're developed well, these sorts of things. It takes time to build that sort of a reputation, and it takes case studies and track record of success, right? And these are the sorts of things I think we take for granted when we talk about sort of like the golden development leagues and selling leagues of the world right now, which is usually like the Netherlands and Portugal in Europe, and then pretty much everywhere else outside of the big five in Europe, frankly, is treated as a selling league these days. And if you don't have the resources, or if you don't have the squad flexibility to also have the understudy who is of a high enough standard developing, ready to take those minutes and then move on himself, it's going to be a clunkier process because you're also having to identify the replacement only after you've accepted that you've sold the predecessor. And I think that there's a lot of... This is a league that forces its teams to rebuild on an annual basis. We saw it with the LA Galaxy, right? The price of success in Major League Soccer is overturning your entire squad for the most part, save for 4 or 5 crucial guys at the core and then some squad guys as well. But I don't know if you really have the sort of calibration of squad rules to actually keep it coherent. And so you do kind of suffer if you do participate in the selling league ideology at this point. At least that's just how it's kind of been curated lately. I don't know what you think, Joe, but I do agree that I think that it kind of is at odds with just because of the difficulty of being able to balance the present and the future on a squad that is so constricted in terms of roster slots, salary spend, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're like sort of two separate skills, I think, in MLS, of building a good roster and keeping a good roster, right? Turning over squads in this league is really difficult. And the Galaxy, as good as I think their build was last year, they've really struggled with that this year, even recognizing that probably the guy who should have won MVP last season, and Ricky Puig, has been out the whole year. They made some mistakes along the way and had some faux pas. It's hard to keep talent and to turn over that talent and add more talent and be so good at it. Like the very best around the league at their jobs in their front office space are the ones who do that kind of stuff. I think about Seattle and their sustained success, and it seems like Cincinnati have really managed to turn over to the post-Lucho era quite well. And a lot of these examples, Columbus, and maybe a lot of that's more Will Fernandez-led. But it's really hard to do that stuff. As far as the Vite situation specifically, I think this is a reminder that MLS very much is that selling league. And along with that, I guess I want to remind everybody, almost every soccer team on the planet is a selling club, right? And Doyle talks about this all the time, and I think he's right about this. There are only a few clubs at the top of the funnel that if they have a player, they're going to keep that player. And also, for some reason, Bilbao over in Spain, who can just keep the Williams brothers for as long as they want. I guess maybe they're not a selling club these days either, even though it feels like everybody's in for their players all the time. You know, all the big clubs are not really selling clubs, but everybody else is. And with MLS, it's a challenge when the window where everybody's doing business, where this is Mexico's longest transfer window right now. Their window doesn't close, so I think until September 12th. They're in like the thick of their window. Vita's already debuted for Pumas. They can register players this time of year. MLS's window, where everybody else is doing business, comes close to the end of their season, and that is really difficult because when players want to move, and they do, because MLS is not their end point, right? If you're an ambitious player like Pedro Vite, you don't want to end up in MLS forever. So it's a reminder that you got to take your medicine, and as MLS continues to grow, hopefully they can attract more and more players to keep around for longer and make the league better on the field and get fans to buy in and all those things. That would be what MLS is hoping for. But for now, yeah, you got to take your medicine. And for Pedro Vite, that looked like, I'm going to leave you now. Goodbye. I want to go make more money.
Heard on that, Joe. My question then for you is but is Liga MX where you thought he would go? Is Liga MX where you want to end up?
Interesting, right? I think this is a trend that we're seeing more and more. So in some ways, yes, kind of. Last season, so I'm thinking about this in the summer window last year, so this window a year ago, and the winter window that we've passed through earlier on this season that closed back in April for MLS teams anyway. We saw more players move from MLS to Liga MX in those two windows than we had seen in any pair of windows before that, right? The summer-winter combo. 15 players moved from MLS to Liga MX. That's the most that we'd seen. Only one player moved from Liga MX to MLS in that window, which was a low for the previous decade. But this is the trend, where you think about Mateusz Bogusz and Cruz Azul coming in for him. Think about Giacomakis going to Cruz Azul from Atlanta United and now maybe back to MLS. We'll see on that front. Liga MX teams are looking to MLS for ready-made talent, and they're willing to pay those players more because they don't have a salary cap, and there are big clubs in Mexico. Like Pumas is a big club. They're a bigger club. They've got more financial might and willing to spend that might. That's the key. Than most every team in Major League Soccer. So this is of all the macro storylines of this move, the one that I'm reminded of most is that Liga MX is quietly just amassing some of MLS's better, if not best, but better players, and they have been doing that now for 3 transfer windows in a row. And I do wonder how that sits at MLS HQ. Like MLS and Liga MX have a good relationship. I don't doubt that. I think there's been far more collaboration than there has been anything else between those leagues. But it's not a great thing for MLS that you're saying, hey, we're losing legit talent, not to Europe where they're going to have more eyeballs in some senses. Not that a lot of people in the U.S. aren't watching Liga MX, of course they are. But it's not where you really want your end destination of talent to be. It's not the best advertisement for your league to have players going to Liga MX compared to the Bundesliga or Serie A or whatever it is. That is a better path, and that is a path that more players want to follow, so that's a path that you want your players to follow to set that example. I don't know what the solution is. I haven't thought about it enough. But I would be surprised if there wasn't some discussion about this trend at MLS HQ.
Final kind of round of questioning as it relates to Vancouver. Forgive me, but on the scale of trying to win now to maybe not even sure what the aspirations are, would Inter Miami be the most win now team that we're seeing right now with the roster they've assembled, the moves they're making, right? And then I would say DC or Montreal maybe are the least win now teams.
Montreal are always the least win now team. Yes.
Okay.
I think
so if that's your scale,
Toronto is truly stripping it down to the bolts at this point.
Shot.
So I guess I would say that. But either way, we're in Canada.
All right. So Toronto, Montreal bottom, Inter Miami top. Where are Vancouver now after this move? Not with the moves they might end up making, but I'll allow you to include Ryan Gauld maybe coming back. But as their roster stands right now with a returning Ryan Gauld, theoretically, where does this put them in the win now range? I'm assuming they're closer to Miami, but I'm not sure they're a lot closer.
Yeah, I would say closer to Miami.
Yeah, go Jeff.
Yeah.
Go Jeff. My bad.
Sorry, I'm thinking through this out loud. I would say that they still have enough of their core members along the spine. I mean, between Takaoka, Blackman, Gauld, Berhalter, White, you still do have the core that can, with some clever talent around them, win MLS Cup. I think you could still envision this squad winning certainly the Canadian Championship, contending for the Shield, getting past the first round of the playoffs this year, regardless of matchup, frankly, when you look at the West. But I do tend to agree, this is the sort of move that does hamstring those abilities because you've lost some of that dynamism, and now you do really need to replace it. So I would say closer to Miami than their Canadian peers, but still further than they were a month ago, let's say.
Yeah, it's like a half step towards all those bad teams that we mentioned. It's not, none of this derails them totally. It is not a season-ending, trophy contention-ending sort of move. but it doesn't, nor should it, make anybody in Vancouver feel great or feel better, certainly, about any of their trophy odds.
Okay, that makes sense to me. All right, on that note, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about some more teams doing some moves, and then we'll take a look at the weekend that was. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. Joe, I'm wearing a black hat. I'm wearing, well, not a black shirt. I should be in all black today because I am mourning the departure of Kevin Cabral from the Colorado Rapids, and I don't really mean that in jest. I think I because we didn't like shuffle the alphabetical order, I did the Colorado season preview like a couple years in a row, and I was really fascinated when they first made the move for Kevin Cabral, and I think it was defensible in the moment for like, maybe we can fix him. There were a lot of maybe we can fix him moves this window and in windows past, combined with the Galaxy are paying some of his salary. But at the time, I remember thinking, like, they have a lot of wingers already, and they don't really utilize wingers when they brought him in, so I'm not quite sure how this is going to work when they had one central midfielder. I'm not sure it has worked, and thus we find ourselves with him being waived by the Rapids. It's just a weird, sad day, because I kind of thought, like, maybe we'll end up seeing him come good. Maybe we will see it click.
Yeah.
And I saw somebody say, like, I think on Reddit, I saw somebody describe him as, like, I've never seen a player, like, do so much but look so bad. Or it was basically, like, does a lot, gets into opportunities, creates moments, but then just doesn't have that final touch or that finishing touch to make the difference to become an elite goal scorer, hence the 0 goals for 2025.
Yeah, it stings, Taylor. I think we all kind of wanted Kevin Cabral to come good because it's been an ongoing saga for him in Major League Soccer. There is definitely some, like, I can I that person. Like, I got to start dating. Like, we can have this relationship, and I'll work on them. I'll send them off around the edges, and it's going to be great. The Rapids definitely thought, almost word for word, it wouldn't shock me if this was said inside their organization. Yeah, we can fix this guy. Like, the Galaxy are broken. This was bad era of the Galaxy. Cabral comes in, bringing Remy Cabral in tow, and they get to LA, and it just never clicks. But some of the underlying numbers were good. Like, he was getting in exactly what you just said, Taylor. Getting in good goal-scoring positions, never really converted chances, and it was not truly ever great at getting into good spots, but was pretty good at it, all things considered, for a young player. But as a DP, you just can't really hold on to a player like that for too long. The Rapids, bargain hunt, they have been the American island of misfit toys in Major League Soccer for years now. Montreal is a Canadian one, just in case anybody out there was curious. The Rapids sweep them up, and I think the data would support some of those decisions in terms of the underlying numbers, and it just hasn't paid off. You mentioned the 0 goals this year. He's not managed more than 5 goals in any one of his 5 MLS seasons to date. Somehow, I can already feel CF Montreal, by the way, sniffing around him. Just got to head to a different island. Maybe it's going to work this time. I don't know if that's real, by the way. I assume it is not. But this is a great decision for the Rapids. It gets a DP spot open for them because he was occupying their 3rd DP spot next to Georgi Mihailovic and Rafa Navarro. So getting that spot open gives them flexibility. It allows them to do one of two things. One, they can sign a DP. Probably not. The other is that they can sign a new U22 initiative player and just go that 2 DP for U22 model with a little extra allocation money. That feels much more Rapids coded. It sounds like Tom Bogart's already reported that they are interested in a 22-year-old winger coming in from Estudiantes, Alexis Manyoma. 22 years old already, could be a U22 signing. I think Tom said even likely, but maybe there's some fluidity there. There's a few different moving pieces and parts for the Rapids, but unlike the Vite situation, this is not one where the Rapids get worse for losing Kevin Cabral, unfortunately. I don't think anybody really has a bad thing to say about him as a person, but player-wise, it just hasn't worked out so far.
Joe, I have an XG question for you. What is the line where it starts to become like is significantly underperforming his numbers? To your point, never scored more than 5 goals. His best goal scoring form for the Rapids was last year, 5 goals with an XG of 6.5 on 33 shots. 2023, he has 2 goals, 3.5 XG on 18 shots. Like, none of that seems terrible, but I'm not familiar enough to really say that with confidence. Like, is 5 goals with a 6.5 XG, how much is he underperforming at that point?
Well, I mean, literally, I suppose he's underperforming by a goal and a half to do the math there. But I think the spirit of your question is, how much data do you need to decide if someone is like a serial underperformer in front of goal? Right? Is that sort of what you're getting at?
I think like a lot of the narrative I saw was, as we've already talked about, like gets into good positions, gets a lot of opportunities, sometimes creates good opportunities, but just can't take them, has so many chances. And it was a lot of like, if he actually scored the opportunities he gets, he would be an elite DP. He would be definitely a designated player. But he doesn't, so he isn't. And then I look at those numbers and I think, like, is that representative of missing a ton of chances to have had an XG of 1.4 this season but have not scored? Like, that is bad, certainly, that he hasn't scored. But those numbers don't scream can't finish and can't hit the ball into the back of the net. They scream Colorado doesn't create a ton, and he still isn't really performing in a way that makes a difference for them.
Yeah, so he's been. I think that second thing, Taylor, is where I would land. The last 3 seasons, he's underperformed by right about that goal and a half margin. The first 2 seasons in LA combined, he underperformed by 7.4 expected goals, according to FBref. Those are like pretty eye-catching numbers. Those are the ones that you look at and say, wow, he is one of the most underperforming finishers in Major League Soccer. But more recently, he has been a closer to unexpected sort of finisher in Colorado, but still not quite. And I think the true data nerds out there would say, like, even 5 seasons of like spot starters, because that's where Kevin Cabral's been. He's been a spot starter, sort of. Even 5 seasons of that is probably not enough data to tell you if someone is like a certifiably underperforming finisher in front of goal. But I mean, the proof's kind of in the pudding with Cabral, and it's not just the finishing stuff. It's also that he doesn't add a lot more. Sorry, I don't mean to just be dumping on Kevin Cabral here. I think we all sort of know he's not a great player. He wasn't adding a ton off the dribble for Colorado, and they needed something more. So we've seen Ted Kudipietro be an impact player for them in the last few weeks. Calvin Harris, I think second-year winger, has been a bit better for them in recent weeks. And now they're looking at another player in those wide areas. I don't think that's a surprise. I think Colorado did absolutely the right thing to clear his DP spot. I think it makes a ton of sense. They're going to be better off for moving forward. And I hope that Kevin Cabral finds some place that he can land, and maybe, just maybe, he'll overperform 1 year his XG. Make it happen.
Montreal.
I'm in. I'm in. Bot sold. Done.
All right, so, Jeff, if Joe's saying that move, the departure of Kevin Cabral, doesn't represent a step backwards for Colorado in terms of their build, in terms of their theoretical win now mentality this season, what about the departure of Chidozie Awazim to Europe? Does that make them worse, or is that an expected move, given that I think he himself was saying, I want to go back to Europe, my family is still in Europe, thank you for what you've done, Colorado, now let me go back?
Yeah, I think it's more. It'll hurt the first team more directly immediately because of everything that Joe said. He took words out of my mouth so many times on Kevin Cabral. I think that.
Hurtful, Joe.
Keep in mind, the attack also works better because it's Cole Bassett and Georgi Mihailovic pulling the strings, and so you don't really need to use width in the same way. So you can look for different profiles, off-ball runners, these sorts of things, right? But I think that it's a little more clear what you need from a center back, no matter what. And he executed that job quite well at a high level. Now, bear in mind, he obviously did not initially leave Europe to come to Colorado, right? He came for FC Cincinnati. And so there's that sort of second move for international players in Major League Soccer where that's where it really feels like I'm not still at the same club, right? Like I'm onto a different project. I'm doing another. The United States is huge. Listeners, like the United States and Canada is massive with so many different like cultures and climates and all of these sorts of things where it is a radical transition for a lot of these players. And so I can very much understand where Cincinnati to Commerce City is a very different sort of feel for where you're playing your games, for the city around it, the community, these sorts of things. But now the question is, where do you find that high-level defending? And Colorado does need that. I think that they still are set up in a way where they need to have those individual matchups because the system isn't quite so robust that it's like, plug and play whoever comes in. And frankly, very few teams in Major League Soccer ever operate that way, just, again, given the squad limitations and constraints and these sorts of things. You do need to have a good amount of cover defensively, and most teams, I would say, don't have enough starting caliber defending in Major League Soccer. So when you lose a proven performer of that caliber, you are worse off. Now, I mean, like, this is all the scale, though, because when you think about the last segment, we're also talking about Vancouver, and it's, okay, well, you lose Pedro Vite, does that change your MLS Cup things? I don't think people were talking MLS Cup this year for the Colorado Rapids, right? So they are still in a position where they can look and say, okay, he was of an age profile we liked. He's obviously of a standard in this league that we liked, but we do have time. We do have some, depending on how long Cole Bassett and Georgi Mihailovic and Rafael Navarro and Connor Ronan, who just got his green card, so squad building, you have an international slot again, these sorts of things. Like, as long as you have that core, you can continue to retool. But yeah, it does make Colorado a little harder to project in terms of how they'd fare in a best of 3 first round. I think that it's also going to be Zach Steffen has looked pretty good this year, and so now it's another shakeup in front of him in the back line. It'll be interesting to see how he handles that, because I think that relationship between a defensive line and goalkeepers makes and breaks games most of the time, and certainly makes Steffen look better if the back line's doing their job in front of him, right? So it'll be an interesting one for that, because this is a huge 8-9 months for Zach Steffen at this point as well, right? Like, I think that he would understandably feel, I don't know if hard done's necessarily the word, because it was such an experimental squad, but I think that he'll look at what Matt Freese was able to do in the Gold Cup with a little bit of envy, right?
Yep, for sure.
So I don't know. It's they're an interesting club, because it's a very different playbook that they operate off of, and a lot of it is just self-inflicted by Stan Kroenke and Kroenke Sports Enterprises. But we'll see. Yeah. We'll see how they're able to adjust to it. It's just kind of difficult to project right now.
So that's my question then for you, Joe. Since Jeff has set the table, I'm going to come to you for one that will require a bit of nuance. I believe in you, though, Joe. So if I think Jeff said it really well, as basically it makes it harder to predict how things will go for Colorado in a first round best of 3 series, and that these moves give them more flexibility, give them some more opportunity to kind of move some players around or find potentially new players to strengthen. What are moves that to you are realistic for the way Colorado operate, but would move that needle? Because right now, when I see these moves, when you get into it and you read the message boards and you get into some of the fan responses and some more expert opinion, I read Doyle talking about this a little bit, you all talking about this a little bit as well, and it feels like it's these are defensible moves, they make sense. Who knows kind of where Colorado are, and I found myself being a little bit ho-hum. And so if we want to be a bit more positive, if we want to be okay, Colorado are making some moves here, what do those realistic moves for Colorado look like to you? Is there a player that you think is theoretically gettable in the league that would make them better? Is there a type of signing you would like to see them make? What might it be?
I think the biggest need for Colorado right now is a new center back, right? Where you're looking at one leaving, you need to add a player. Otherwise, Ian Murphy is your starter, and that's not a place that I would personally choose to be. I think Ian Murphy is a suitable MLS player, but I would not want to be in a position where he has to play big minutes for a team heading into the playoffs. So that is the most obvious. I mean, really, if you look at Colorado, you have to feel fairly good about the top of your spine with Mihailovic and with Navarro. I don't think Navarro is a total game-changing top-end DP in this league, but I think he's a useful, probably better than useful starting striker who can give you some real value. I don't think you're looking to address in those spots. They're clearly already out there in the market looking for a winger. Would it be great to see them add a DP winger instead of a U22? Yeah, it would. You had a better chance of hitting on one of those guys than you do on a U22, which are really, really hard to hit on. Then you look a little bit deeper into the midfield, and I think they have a lot of really good midfield players in this team. I don't think there is a huge need to strengthen in that part of the field. Cole Bassett's now back in action, and he's so crucial to how they want to play, and he was a huge part of what made them so territorially dominant last year, where they were, I think, top 5 in MLS in touches in the box, the opposing box, and in the final third per 90 last year. The Rapids, they were controlling games high up the field, not because they were a possession-dominant team, but because with energy from players like Cole Bassett in midfield, they were active in winning the ball. They could squeeze the field, and Bassett is probably their best progressive passer and progressive carrier in that midfield group. So he's back and playing minutes for them after having some injury troubles. And then you've got some of the other midfielders Jeff already mentioned, Ronan, and you look in that part of the field with Josh Atencio and Larraz, you have a really nice mix of skill sets there. And you've spent a bunch of money already on your back line in MLS defensive terms between Reggie Cannon and Sam Vines, and Awaziam's going out the door now, but Maxu, you have a lot of salary budget space invested on that back line. Those guys need to perform, and they haven't been great this year. But really, I am looking at, how can I strengthen at center back? How can I strengthen on the wing? I know that's not the sexy answer, but those are the spots that the Rapids clearly do need bodies in. And could you really suitably see upgrades in those spots because they haven't gotten elite production from those areas?
Are there any players for any of the teams, East or West, like near the bottom, that you think like that guy, if you call up Atlanta or DC or Montreal or Toronto or maybe the Galaxy, like are there any players that you think could move that needle, could make them defensively stronger, could give them some better wide play? I don't know if you're Colorado, if you want to go back to the Galaxy well, that didn't work out so well with Cabral, but maybe you do. Who knows?
I was thinking about Pedrinho over in Dallas, Jeff, like as a wide attacker.
That's a good shout.
Somebody who I think is like really underrated in terms of his on-field contribution. Is not a pure winger, but I think, Jeff, you detailed it well. With how the Rapids play, they don't really need that so much. They like to keep their wingers more inside in the pockets and the half spaces. He's one name that came to mind for me. I don't know where your head's at with this, Jeff.
Well, it's just funny because Atlanta kind of made one of those moves to Montreal, of course, right? With Efrain Morales, who is from Decatur. He's a homegrown prospect, and Montreal had brought in George Campbell. They sold George Campbell. They replaced him with another homegrown product of Atlanta, which is just deeply funny to me. Why reinvent the wheel when the first one worked just fine? It's interesting because it's like I would have to look at. There are profiles that I think are becoming a little clearer to project as like this could be, you could start to see some of these like half season rentals. It's a term that you hear a lot in baseball around this time of year, right? Where you're getting a pitcher or whatever the case may be. And he's only going to be here for 2 months. And so you have to trade a couple of prospects for it, but usually lower prospects. And then he leaves, you all part ways. Everyone got something out of it, right? And I don't think you quite see those moves often yet because there has, with the competitive balance, not been that clear of disparity between this a buying club and a selling club, to say nothing of how many headaches do soccer officers want to give themselves with figuring out cap accommodations and what the future assets, draft picks aren't worth what they used to be, et cetera. But I do wonder about more veteran players and just looking and saying, like, does Atlanta eventually say Derek Williams maybe doesn't make much sense for them anymore? If they've already accepted that this isn't going to be their year and they need to get younger and more dynamic, whatever the case may be. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily the profile that a fan of the Rapids would look at and say, like, yes, we've got him, and now we're so back, right? I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the result and the reaction to it, but I think that those are the players who are most likely. That could change, right? And I think that we're all still very much in real time figuring out what the cash trade transfer market within the league is going to look like, right? In terms of valuations on these players, in terms of what level of player garners one of those cash fees rather than a package of allocation money, an international slot, and a third round super draft pick, right? I think that we're still trying to figure out what that is. And so maybe the cash market's an easier way to get some players who might actually do a high level job for more than 2 months, we'll say. But yeah, I guess I would be surprised unless it is like Toronto or the Galaxy or a team that is genuinely like, we are so far from the playoffs that we have stopped thinking about it. So yes, you can ask about our most impactful players right now.
All right. Jeff has started mentioning Atlanta. We're going to talk about them. Let's take one more break. We'll talk about the moves Atlanta are making, could theoretically make, how many players they need to move on. We'll also take a look at the weekend that was. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. We've talked about 2 teams. Why not make it 3? Let's talk Atlanta United, Jeff. You mentioned one of the moves that they are theoretically making, have already made. Still a little confused about Efrain Morales, but it seems like he will be with Montreal in fairly short order. What else are they doing, or what else do you expect them to do?
Yeah, well, they've also gotten rid of their 4th designated player, right? And so they were, unlike, we talked in the last episode about teams that have maybe had more than 3 DPs and just not reported it for convenient reasons. This was not one of those cases. This was DC United covering the majority of Mateus Clic's salary and then loaning him to Atlanta so that they could free up an international slot. And then this past week, Atlanta has let him go, decided he's not part of that process that they want moving forward. It makes sense. He's a veteran on a loan deal. I think that generally is a profile of player that most clubs will use on a as-needed basis rather than building around. So a lot of that makes sense. But now we're back to, so what does Atlanta want to do? And it's this sort of like self-sustaining cycle again, where Atlanta brings in talented players, technical players, players who have flair and have impressed in moments and look really good in a highlight package, maybe is the best way to put it, right? But then across 90 minutes, it isn't coherent. They haven't been playing terribly well this year. It's been very well documented, especially after spending a new inbound transfer record to bring in Emmanuel Latilat, and then also bringing back Miguel Almiron on an even higher salary than Latilat's on. And they're making moves now to supplement. And I would imagine that they're trying to find players who are better fits, positional fits. And the reality is those are probably going to be more selfless actors. These are going to be people who are doing more thankless work maybe off the ball or on the ball to free up Latilat and Almiron to be able to run into space. And so, maybe there will be benefit from it. I don't know if it can really get much worse than it's been this year. I would say that they are still the most disappointing team in MLS this year compared to preseason expectation. It's amazing that they got to this point though, Joe. And I look at it and I think we've been waiting for 7 years now, 6.5 years, to really say like Atlanta knows what they're doing and they're back. But since Martino left, it's so hard to even begin to conceptualize the identity that they're going for, that Atlanta United at a macro level is hoping to become, where it's just getting difficult to look and say, okay, this is the profile player that they need, or this is where they're at in their evolution. They're targeting next season, year after, this year, whatever the case may be. I've just completely lost. And I've watched a lot of Atlanta this year, more than I would say that I have over the last 2 years, and I have absolutely no idea what they're going for at this point. And that's about as bad as it can get.
Yeah, I mean, in the short term, they're tearing things down, right? So that doesn't fully answer your question at all. I recognize that, but that's the common theme behind these moves. If we think about their season so far, they've traded John De Silva, they moved Edwin Mosquera back to Colombia on a loan deal. He was their only U22 player. I don't expect that he'll be back in Atlanta. They've waived Click. Now they don't get a ton of salary cap relief from that, but they do get some. And trading Morales, one of their young assets in Major League Soccer, gives them some allocation money. This team is a little bit strapped at the moment, and they're trying to generate new assets to give them flexibility to do stuff. If you don't think that Brooks Lennon has been offered around, I would imagine that you'd probably be wrong about that. If you could give Atlanta a get out of jail free card on Bartosz Slis, I imagine they would be pretty eager to move along those lines. This is, even with the reports that they're looking for a defensive midfielder. Apparently they've agreed to a fee with Hull City for Colombian Steven Alzate, who did play with Ronny Deila in the past, which is maybe a bit of a red flag. Maybe not, though. It sounds like he might have already been on Atlanta's scouting list before Deila got there. Either way, they are going to try to acquire some assets because it doesn't take all that long to turn over your squad in MLS. Like Cincinnati, the Galaxy, Minnesota United in recent years, they've all proven that you can do it in a few transfer windows. So you can do both things simultaneously. But by and large, right now for Atlanta, this is about turning over the squad. That's what needs to happen. As far as the macro vision, I think they want to be Seattle, is what I think about them. And Garth Lagerwey, who was recently diagnosed with cancer, so all of our best wishes to Garth, sincerely. And if there's anything that we can be doing, I hope that the soccer community in Atlanta will let us know, and we can be a real help there. But Garth Lagerwey, Seattle ties. Chris Henderson, Seattle ties. Things that Garth Lagerwey has talked about before, by the way. He said also in that post about his cancer diagnosis, quote, I'll be back. So I am looking forward to seeing Garth back with Atlanta in the day-to-day side of things. He talked about how when he comes into Atlanta to be their president and CEO, we're pretty much done doing the Almada Barco thing where we go and drop $20 million on a 19-year-old Argentine kid and hope that he's really, really good. Instead, we're going to go after in-prime DPs like we did in Seattle. And then Chris Henderson comes in, and then they go and sign Morenchuk as a really big DP investment in the Lagerwey and Lagerwey at the time era. And that's flopped. But in theory, you can see the reasoning there. You think about Nick Ladero and his arrival in Seattle and how that transformed the club and really did define an era in Major League Soccer. Then you think about Almiron and Latilat. These are in-prime players. And then you look at the U22 side of things. Atlanta have made no movement on incoming U22s because they've been pretty forward about the fact that they want to fill those through their academy. And who else is doing that in Major League Soccer? Well, Seattle's doing that in Major League Soccer. So I think the vision for Atlanta as a club is clear. And why not, right? Like Seattle are one of the defining teams in the last decade in Major League Soccer, decade plus. So I would also like to be Seattle. It just happens that their DPs haven't hit in the way that they needed them to. Their supporting cast is just not at the level that it needs to be. And when those things are true, you start rebuilding.
What is the concern then in terms of that rebuild, do you think, for an organization that has had the successes they've had, have reached the heights that they have reached, but a lot of these signings you mentioned, like they've whiffed on, and you can whiff on a few. Things can go wrong. It could be the wrong fit, personality clashes, whatever. But I thought Doyle summed it up really well. Here's the quick kind of like breakdown. Alexei Moranchuk hasn't worked. Miguel Almiron hasn't worked. Stian Gregerson hasn't worked. Sabio Blanice, Bartosz Slitz, Luis Abram, Matthias Klick, Derek Williams, Tristan Muyumba, Josh Cohen. Stop me when I get to the name of a player who you're fairly certain will still be around when Atlanta are finally good again. Should I include Emmanuel Latte-Lath? How certain are we on that one? And it feels like that is sort of the huge issue there, right? Is like even if you're rebuilding, if you want to kind of change the identity a little bit or sort of like strengthen while also keeping some assets, it feels like it's unclear who the prime assets are, who are the ones that are definitely going to come good that you should be building around. Is that fair, or am I being overly harsh on Atlanta's present situation?
I think it's fair, personally. Like I think that you look and it's we use the word rebuilding because they're bad, but I don't think we could actually honestly say that they're rebuilding, because I think that rebuilding is a concentrated effort to truly like phase out the previous generation, right? Like, if you're going to think about it, sometimes it's a little cleaner to think about this with a national team just because it's a player pool, so there's no acquisition model. It's just pretty much the squad you have, right? And when you think about, like, the women's national team, 2023, they wrote it, the core, too long, but they'd won back-to-back World Cups. You want to see what they can do. You don't want to break up a title-winning team. That's fine. And then it's only after they make wholesale changes and they really do force out the old guard that you start to see success happen again, right? And it's because they're able to build easier to implement new ideas with fresh minds, right? And so Atlanta has never done that. Like, since 2018, it has been going from Almiron to Pity Martinez to Ezequiel Barco to Thiago Almada, right? Like, they just have Luis Araujo. Like, they've never really had a window of time where they've looked like they're just playing for the future and they're trying to identify talent for the present. And so I think it's a little harder to really see the forest through the trees, like a bit, because you're just constantly surrounded by the same trees and you're not really taking a different vantage point from it. And like, I couldn't agree more with Doyle. Like, I don't know, when you listen to the names that you recited, the current squad, like, I understood why fans were excited when Almiron came back, but very different point of his career at this point, very different skill set available to him, and now different levels of effectiveness. That's far worse, and I don't think that it's anything that will tarnish the good vibes around Miguel Almiron throughout Atlanta. I think that he and Joseph Martinez are pretty certifiable royalty at this point, no matter what they do. But it does make it more difficult when you are, again, in a league where you are so constrained with how you can spend on your roster, and you are using so many of those, like, spend over the cap, international slots, these sorts of things on players that you're not even certain would start on an MLS Cup winning team. So I think it is a challenge, and you hear a lot of critics of Major League Soccer say that the lack of promotion and relegation and the very broad playoff field that they have with 18 teams qualifying at least for the wild card game out of 30 as being, anti-competition and kind of a soft cushion for teams to just sit on and never feel uncomfortable. Well, I think the flip side is apathy is arguably even worse than being bad. Because at least if you're bad, you can feel something about it, right? And at least if you're, like, genuinely bad, but you're also trying to build for the future, you can kind of appreciate, like, as, the next wave comes up, you can look and say, like, oh, Morales, like, oh, that's exciting to see a 21-year-old center back from Decatur. Like, I think that that's a player that we can get excited about. But then if it's like, great, now we have to move him because we are really focused on a veteran core and we're hoping that we have the next guy, it's like, okay, well, then why would a fan continue to be excited about that? Like, I think that Ronnie Dyla walked into a very difficult moment, sorry, not conversation, but like a situation with the fan base and with their general feeling towards the on-field product of Atlanta United. But it's really, really tough to see where they are closer to understanding how they can get back to MLS Cup at present than they were this time last year, when they were barely fighting to make it into the wild card round before they upset Inter Miami, of course.
Joe, my argument would be sign Lionel Messi, because that seems to have worked out pretty well for Inter Miami. Seems to have made them pretty good. So could Atlanta do the same? Can Lionel Messi be in two places at once?
He can't be in Austin, so I'm going to say no. Probably not so far. No Messi sightings in Austin just yet. I imagine he's not in Atlanta either.
Is he going to be in Austin for All-Star? He's in there, right?
He's on the roster. I've not yet been out at. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, sorry. I saw a quote from Nico Estevez at the first media day on Monday. That was something of, I can only coach the players who are here, with a smile, and that's a league question. So, yeah, it sounds like even the coach doesn't know if he'll have Lionel Messi to work with on Wednesday. That's fun.
So let's get that WWE entrance music in the middle of the game when he comes on.
Baby. Yeah.
Joe, Lionel Messi from the weekend, still quite good? Is that the takeaway from the 5-1 win over the Red Bulls?
Messi pulls out like the assist of the season in this game. It's like classic Messi, but classic Messi is the greatest player ever. So it's a really, really nice ball to Jordi Alba, who goes and scores. Miami been terrible, like truly some of the worst I'd seen them in the first 20 minutes of that game. Couldn't get out of their own half. Ceded a bad set piece goal, bad goalkeeping from Rocco Rios Novo, bad set piece defending as a whole. Miami were in a tough spot, and they just lost to Cincinnati midweek as well. So it looked like they were headed to back-to-back losses. And then Messi finally gets on the ball in the attacking half and pulls out this sublime through ball to Jordi Alba that the entire right side of the Red Bulls back line just does not see until the ball is well on its way between their lines and into Jordi Alba's feet. It's a great goal. Then he scores a brace. He's got a brace in, was it 6 of his last 7 MLS games?
Yeah, 6 of 7.
It's ridiculous. Miami are still the team that we thought they were, right? Where they are the team that is most capable of flipping the switch at any given moment and should terrify you because of it, but are also just so capable of playing horrible soccer for stretches of time and getting punished for it. And, odds are when you got the GOAT, you're going to get punished less than you are punishing others. But still, man, this team is exactly who we know they are, and that is a weird comfort to me for some reason.
I doubt it is much comfort to Red Bull supporters who are there watching this one. But two of my buddies who were there were messaging just to say that, it was not fun to watch their team be torn apart, but at the same time, when you do get sort of that next level Messi performance, it is a sight to behold. It is something to kind of enjoy witnessing, even if it is at your team's expense. So, Messi, still good. Miami, still pretty good. We assume they will continue to get better as they sign their 7th or 8th DP. Was that the game of the weekend, or would we point in the direction of El Trafico, Joe?
Dude, I don't know how this happens. El Trafico coming into this weekend was averaging 4.28 goals per game. What am I supposed to say?
Say it. Form goes out the window.
Oh, yeah.
It's a derby.
Okay, so I wrote about this for Backfield.
Yes, you did.
And Diego Fagundes, before this game, thank you for taking me there, Taylor, because I wasn't going to get there on my own, and I'm glad you did. Diego Fagundes put out on Twitter, records don't mean anything in rivalry games. And I hate that stuff, man. I think that's the dumbest stuff. I really do. Yeah, they do. One team's probably better than the other team, and the better team's probably more likely to win, although, home field advantage, et cetera, et cetera. There are other things to factor in. Business jargon, whatever. But really, records do mean something. Except, I guess, in El Trafico, where records really don't mean anything. And I love that Fagundes put this out, because in El Trafico, it is just so true. I think I wrote something about just toss your notions about that stuff being all made up out the window and bumper-to-bumper traffic on the 405. This is the best rivalry in MLS. And we just had a 4-2 hell is real game between Columbus and Cincinnati, and somehow El Trafico reminds us all that it is still the king. Lots of great rivalries in this league, but that is the best one. The Galaxy just won't lose to LAFC this year. Marco Reus rescued them with an 87th minute winner back, I think it was in May. That sort of kickstarted Marco Reus's, oh crap, this guy's actually still very, very good campaign in MLS.
Yeah.
And in this game against against LAFC on Saturday, the Galaxy are down 2 goals at 2 separate moments in this game, and still climb back into the driver's seat, or at least climb back to get a result. It's a 97th minute winner, equalizer, from Maya Yoshida. That gets them a point out of this game. They were down. They were never quite out in this match. We also got one of the greatest El Trafico quotes of all time after the match, in my opinion, where Yoshida says, "The good thing is my daughter doesn't like LAFC, so at least I can go home with a smile, and hopefully she's going to be proud of me." The intergenerational hatred of the other side of this rivalry is already there from players that aren't even from Los Angeles. Just put this straight into my veins. This game was awesome. One of the games of the season, for sure.
Jeff, you going to echo that one?
Yeah, I mean, it was phenomenal. There were some other really good games this weekend, but I'm with you on Marco Reus. I, too, kind of assumed that it would be more of the Giroud level And it's different though because he's not a designated player, so you have different expectations, right? And you look and it's like, okay, maybe he'll come in and do occasional like Gareth Bale style 20-minute shifts from the bench, really change a game on his day. But he put in a full 90. Right, and he's been doing that a bit more, playing 80. He's played at least 84 minutes in each of his last 6 games, dating back to late June. So he is like legitimately contributing in a way that the team needed him to in Ricky Puig's absence. And I think Ricky Puig has also been like a huge proponent of the like form goes out the window and we've won MLS Cup more than you and now more recently than you. And like he was joining in on the chatter back in May as well, right? So like it really is something that has been deeply ingrained to a point where it wasn't, kind of initial fears that the reason that it was so entertaining in 2018 was because it was like Zlatan versus Carlos Vela, right? And it's like, okay, well, once those guys go, who's going to carry the mantle? And now it's more just like, no, it's all of them. Actually, all of them, especially the Galaxy, have seen this as another game that isn't a trophy but could be, right? Or like it's not a trophy to win, but it's definitely a trophy you can lose emotionally, if that makes sense. So it's really, I don't know, just the league needs more of that. They need more teams that genuinely dislike each other, because I think generally it's a lot of, who's the matchup? Oh, okay, got it. Keep it professional, off we go. Like it's great to see when you have that emotion for this, for Hell is Real, for Cascadia, when Brian Schmetzer is saying, like, they call themselves Soccer USA, but I think we've done it better. Like you do need that sort of like character and flair, and so it's always good wherever you can find it.
I'm not sure how I feel that both of my co-hosts today are essentially leaning back and doing the Palpatine, good, let the hate flow through. But I get it. I think I'd agree with that. You like the palpable animosity?
It's so good. Like the atmosphere for this game was amazing. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I'm starting to get more and more FOMO watching soccer games from my couch, just because soccer games are great. I don't know. I'm at a stage in my life, I guess, where I just want to be at more games.
Yep.
And this was maybe the FOMO-iest of them all so far, this MLS campaign. The BMO crowd at the start of this game was like deafening. It was so loud. And the atmosphere all throughout, with the pushing and pulling and the tugging, like Denny Bouanga going off in this match and just basically running a go route right down the seam on his second goal in this game. There's just so much good stuff. So many weird moments in this match. So much well-played soccer as well. Some different tactical tweaks from Greg Vanney as he's still trying to find exactly how to get the most out of this team and how to get them to play the way that he wants without Ricky Puig. There's a hard balance to be found there. LAFC, this maybe to go slightly more big picture, Eddie Segura gets sent off in a second half stoppage time scuffle in this game. Don't really know how he was the only one who had some disciplinary action there, but I guess Greg Vanney did as well, if memory serves. But on the player side, he gets sent off. LAFC finished the game with 10, but not before they concede that equalizer from Yoshida. That stinks. Like, these are, make no mistake, these are points dropped for LAFC. They had the lead multiple times. They botched it. For LAFC, Marlon is no longer an LFC player. He's moved on. Aaron Long's out for the season with an Achilles injury. That's a really tough blow for him and for LAFC. Eddie Segura is a good MLS player, I think. He gets sent off in this match, as I said. Now you're missing him. The depth is getting thinner, right? That's my point for LAFC at the center back spot. The big story for them this summer is they've got 2 DP spots open, and they're certainly going to fill at least one of those with a big-time player. Or they could have 2 DP spots open, depending on what they do with Dilrosun. But either way, they're also going to make a big move at center back. That doesn't look like, oh, we're going to sign a DP, but it means they're going to sign a starting level center back, easy for me to say, this summer, and they need to. They're also bringing in Matthew Chouanier, according to Paul Tenorio, other reports about that. So they're actively adding talent here. I think of all the teams in MLS that could look really actually quite different by the end of the summer window, and there's a lot of teams eager to do stuff, but LAFC have more to do than most contenders. They're maybe the contender to watch outside of South Beach.
Here we go. All right, well, I don't want either one of you to have any more FOMO for matches missed. Joe, I'm assuming you need to hustle to the stadium to be there, 8 hours early for the skills competition? I know you don't want to miss that one.
I got to camp out. I got to be there. I'm actually starting the line like they have for the new iPhone, right? Everybody gets in the line. I'm going to be that guy. I got a tent. I got everything I need. So actually, yeah, I'm already. I was hoping to do 10 hours early, but I guess I'll settle for 8. That's fine.
Will anyone exceed the performance of Kai Havertz when we watched him in person?
Oh, I mean, how can you exceed the greatness of Kai Havertz just absolutely not hitting the target like 12 times in a row? It's just impossible, Taylor. I'll never forget that Audi field day. Never.
Nor will I, Joe. I was happy to be there with you. I hope the skills competition this evening lives up to that high, high bar. But, Joe, thank you for taking all the time to talk about some MLS with me today, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Jeff Reuter, the same. I look forward to you and Joe talking more MLS tomorrow. I believe that's the plan. I look forward to your thoughts on the skills competition, such as it was, such as it will be. Thank you for your time, my friend.
Thank you. I look forward to my thoughts as well. I can't wait to have those thoughts.
Listeners, thank you all so much for listening and supporting. We very much appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again very soon.